Hi, it's Ashley with At Home with Ashley, and I just finished wallpapering this super cool rainbow stripe room, but you can probably see the issue. This is a little bit of a thinner wallpaper, so it's showing the wallpaper texture through it, and I have a whole nother side of the room to wallpaper, and that side has even thicker drywall texture. So what I'm gonna do is skim coat the wall and show you how you can do it too. So if you have super textured walls and you want a wallpaper, you can do this. To start, scrape the existing texture with a taping knife. If there's high ridges in the drywall, this will cut them off and jumpstart the process for getting a smooth wall. It'll also save time later when applying the skim coat since less layers will be needed. Now we're going to prepare the joint compound. For this project, we're using a product called Topping, and it comes pre-mixed in a bucket, and it's designed as a finishing joint compound that creates a really smooth finish. It's easy to sand, so this will be really perfect. It's a little bit cheaper to buy the non-mixed joint compound, but this is easier, and we are adding a little bit of water to get it the right consistency. We're just going to thin it up, and that makes it easier to spread on the wall and get smooth. So first we're going to add a little water to the bucket of joint compound. Then we're using a mixing attachment on the drill to stir it, and you just keep mixing it until it's about the consistency of thick cake icing. And now the easiest way to apply the joint compound to the wall is to paint it on with a roller. This is the main way to make this a DIY project, because sure, you could use a knife and put the joint compound on the wall, but that's much slower and it's trickier, especially if you don't do it often. Roll it all the way up and down to distribute it evenly, and don't worry if it's not perfect. The next step will clean it up nicely. Work in small sections on the wall. We generally did about 4 foot by 4 foot sections at a time, since we were either rolling on the angled wall or the flat part of the wall. If your whole wall is flat, you can work in 4 by 8 foot sections, so go as far as possible without the mud drying out. Note that the working time on the joint compound can be affected by room temperature, airflow, and humidity, so each space will dry differently. Pressing the roller onto the wall firmly will remove any air that might be in the mud that could cause bubbles. And while painting on the joint compound, make sure to stay an inch away from baseboards, other walls, outlets, and the ceiling. Another tip is to keep a bucket of water and a sponge handy. That way it's easy to clean up if any joint compound is flipped onto the floor or anywhere it's not wanted. Next, use the 14-inch taping knife to skim off the drywall compound. Scrape from the top and pull the knife downwards. This will put some mud on the knife. Use that in the inch on the top and on the sides where the joint compound wasn't spread in the last step. Work down the wall until you're 80% of the way down, then go down to the bottom and do the same going up. Continue in column sections across the wall. Don't push too hard to take all the mud off, just flatten the joint compound. Put any excess mud in the pan. You can scrape the excess mud back into the bucket if it's still clean. Tip: it's helpful to have extra lights on the wall that's being smooth. That way it's easier to see any imperfections or ridges while working. Once you have the whole wall applied, or however far you're going, you're going to let it dry. And like I said, it depends on where you're at and the air temperature. It's cold here, so it took about 1 day for our joint compound to dry, and that was with like heaters on it. So we would do 1 coat a day. Okay, this is the first wall we skim coated. That is still wet, but you can see it's getting pretty close. My husband wants to do a second coat because this wall was just so textured, but if your walls are not as textured as ours, I really think 1 coat would be fine. Okay, so now we're going to start applying the joint compound onto the angled part of our wall, and it's the exact same process as before. So this isn't a hard project, it's just a little bit tedious and time consuming. But I did want to talk to you about some of the supplies we're using for this project. So we have a 9-inch roller frame, and then we have a paint roller cover, and that has a 3/4 inch nap. And you want this to be a little bit of a longer nap, because you want it to be able to get texture onto the wall. And so right here, Preston is examining the knife before beginning to see how the blade curves, and he positions the knife so the curve is away from the wall to make sure that it doesn't gouge the wall. The next supply I wanted to talk about is this taping knife we're using. We had a shorter one, but we bought the 14-inch size. And why? It's because the longer the blade, the flatter the finish will be. And you could also use a long skimming blade. Those come up to 40 inches. So if you want to get a really even finish, that works too. On the end of our paintbrush, we also have an extension pole, and that makes it so that we can easily reach the top, the bottom, anywhere on the wall, which makes this project go a little bit faster because you don't have to hop on and off a ladder. Once the first coat is totally dry, you can use that taping knife and just scrape off any ridges from the first coat. Depending on your texture or how damaged your wall was, you will need 1 coat, but we ended up needing 4, so we just kept applying it as the first one would dry. A tip for cleaning off the joint compound from the roller is to use this like 5-in-1 paint tool, and it just gets all of it out so you can clean it easy. Once we were happy with the finish on our walls, like I said, we did 4 layers. It took 4 days. We ran the taping knife over and removed all the rest of the ridges. We did this again. This is an easy step, but we just really wanted it to look good because we spent so much time on it. Once the wall is smooth enough, use a fine drywall sanding block to lightly sand any imperfections. The taping knife smoothing the joint compound will mostly leave a flat surface, so a quick sanding should clean up any bumps or ridges. Make sure to wear a mask while sanding. The dust can irritate your eyes, your nose, or your throat, and down the road it can lead to other health problems, so just put on a mask. After sanding, vacuum the wall to remove dust left from the sanding. Then use a slightly damp rag and wipe over the wall to remove any leftover drywall dust. You don't want it too wet because the joint compound is water soluble, so if you clean it too much, it'll damage the finish. Now the wall is ready to be primed. Preston, my husband, spent 4 days in here doing the drywall, and it's not that much like actual time, but once you do it and it takes like a half an hour, then you have to let it dry for 24 hours, especially right now it's so cold that drying takes a while. Anyway, it is glassy smooth now. It looks so good. This is definitely a level 5 drywall texture. If you don't know about drywall texture, the higher the level 5 means like perfectly smooth, and so level 1 would be like really bumpy drywall. So we got this level 5, amazing finish, and now I want it everywhere. But I need to finish getting it ready for drywall. So I'm gonna prime it, and then we can put it on the rest of the drywall and finish up in here. Finally, you're going to prime the smooth drywall. You need to apply at least 2 coats, and make sure to use primer. Don't just paint on there because this will prep the walls for paint or wallpaper. If this step is skipped, you'll need lots more coats of paint, and it's less expensive than paint, so it's just better to prime because it saves time and money. This is the last step that's needed to prep the wall, and this is what you do before paint or wallpaper, and you need to let that primer dry for 24 hours before you do anything else to the wall. I want to show you a video of what the wall looks like, all smooth and primed, so you can see, even though I primed it, it didn't leave any texture from the roller. Okay, I wanted to do a video of the final room with the rainbow stripes on both sides, and you can kind of see they visually match up to kind of create a rainbow, which I think is really fun. So I think it looks so nice, and you can see how the smooth walls look beautiful on here. It's still drying, so there might be a few bubbles that are drying out, but look at that. Goes purple in that corner. And this is the side where I had such problems with the texture showing through. So that is why we did the skim coat over here, so that we could get this nice, beautiful, smooth wall. And now we know how. And I kind of want all my walls smooth. My husband's gonna hate me, but it looks amazing. So I hope that was helpful. And now you know how to skim coat walls, and you know how to get this nice, smooth finish, no matter if you're painting or wallpapering like I did. And it's such a fun room, so let me know if you like it. Give it a thumbs up, and I would love a subscribe if you're not already subscribed.